if we can manage and help support the health of our children, that's the mark of a really highly functioning society, right? And if we could stop them from having diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, certain cancers, and other chronic illnesses, they wouldn't grow up with that to deal with as adults, and they would know more, and they'd be able to function and attain their own highest level of human potential. So I will try to find 10 seconds of profundity to share with you.
Well, first of all, I have to find out what the heck profundity means. Great to see you.
I just love it. I just love it. To start the show this way just really shows our audience how much fun this is for us and our guests. So thank you for being here with us today, Meryl Fury.
My pleasure.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to be in this setting and having a conversation with you about things that are oh so important to Meryl Fury. So let's start at the beginning. How did you kind of get started in this space of, you are a registered nurse, you've got a master's degree in nursing, you are CEO and president and CEO of a nonprofit organization that is focused on helping people get educated in plant-based lifestyle, and especially with a focus on children and just the organizations that you have collaborated with. How did you, let's start at the beginning. How did you get on this path?
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to give you really the short version because it's been a long time. So I started when I was 15 by cutting out what I called four-legged mammals out of my diet. And from there, it progressed as I learned more about how, and it wasn't that I was really studying nutrition at that time, or, the macronutrients or the micronutrients. I wasn't studying that because I was 15. And there weren't a lot of books or people talking about that at that time. That was 1975 to 76, right? So that wasn't really, there wasn't anything called a plant-based movement. There wasn't anything called, ACLM didn't exist. Food for Life didn't exist. None of that. Greger wasn't around. There was no Esselstyn doing anything. Campbell wasn't doing anything. I was, just trying to figure it out on my own at 15. But what I realized is that physically, I felt better, and emotionally, psychically, I felt better when I didn't eat animal products. So over years, I whittled these different animal products out of my diet. I realized I was allergic to dairy products. That was a big relief. I didn't have to eat those anymore. And I moved to the Midwest. Now I live in Wisconsin. The fish that is in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, is all coming, a lot of it coming out of the Great Lakes. That is not food. That is not, that is not fish that should be eaten by people anyway. So, just over years, I carved different things out of my diet. And then also at the same time, life is happening. So I got my nursing degree and I advanced that to a master's degree, and I went into public health specifically. And I saw how basic components of life, like food and water and stress management and toxic substance and all that, can affect the quality of people's lives and how they develop and how the children grow up and what kind of disease processes manifest in a body. So that's really been the entry point. I can also say this, so funny. So back when I started, there wasn't this thing called food is medicine. That wasn't, all these catchy terms that we have now, those weren't things back then. But I did enjoy studying herbology, using specific herbs to affect certain cures. That was my introduction to food as medicine, like literally using food for medicinal purposes. So with all of that combined, that's where I started. I was in public health nursing specifically. Like I said, I did that for 30 something years. And right about when I hit call it 58-ish years old. Women of a certain age, you two understand this, we lose our filters and we start saying things that, we might not have been saying the 20 years earlier. It's like you just get fed up and say, well, heck, I'm just going to say what I need to say, because me dancing around on eggshells and walking on tiptoes around this stuff has not carried the day. It hasn't delivered the message. So I'm just going to say what I need to say. And I got to be about 58 years old, and I was in these different public health clinics. I was managing clinics, and I started to lose my filter, and I started saying things that I probably wouldn't have said otherwise, which was good, very freeing. And it also allowed me at the same time to realize those environments were not where my heart was. They were not in alignment with who I am as a person. So I just stepped into really going where my passion is. And thankfully I had an opportunity to become president and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, which is just like falling into a pillow for me, and I've been able I've just been super comfortable and super happy and very proud and honored. I cherish this position that I have now. It's a perfect fit for how I do what I do.
So being the neophyte I am with certain organizations, what does PBNM stand for, and what do you do?
Great question. So PBNM is Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, founded originally in the Chicagoland area. I live in Wisconsin, so it's founded a little bit south of where I am. It was founded by an interventional cardiologist named Dr. Stephen Loam, who is still active in the field, although he lives in California and he's no longer directly connected to PBNM. But he founded it and was president and CEO for about a year. He founded it because as an interventional cardiologist, he realized that plant-based nutrition was important for his patients and for himself, his family. But it was difficult in the typical American, I'll call that allopathic medicine practice, to really promote this message of plant-based nutrition and the value that it has for people's health. The American medical model is a for-profit model, and that causes a certain pathway. It creates a certain pathway, right? It means that you have to be bringing money in all the time. And we know that plant-based nutrition doesn't do that. It gets people healthy, right? Instead of keep people sick for the most part. So he started Plant-Based Nutrition Movement to get this message to the people that were open to hearing the message, that plant-based nutrition actually can stop, reverse, prevent heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, certain other chronic illnesses, can prevent certain acute illnesses as well. And so that's what Plant-Based Nutrition Movement was founded for. Since 2021, we have been very focused on children's nutrition. And that is our, keystone piece now. That's what we focus on, is child nutrition. Because my belief is, and this comes from me as a public health nurse, if we can manage and help support the health of our children, that's the mark of a really highly functioning society, right? And if we could stop them from having diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, certain cancers, and other chronic illnesses, they wouldn't grow up with that to deal with as adults, and they would know more, and they'd be able to function and attain their own highest level of human potential. So that's what we do.
This really kind of is a trigger for me, in that I see so many children today who are not being given a fair start at life. I mean, let's not beat around the bush on that. With the obesity rate going through the roof for children, they now have the onset of adult diseases that were unheard of in adults years ago, and now it's commonplace. And you mentioned that when you first went plant-based, that emotionally you started feeling better. Is there a connection for the people that may never have connected the dots on this? Is there a connection between childhood depression and a lot of the violence that we're seeing in children and what they consume, like animal products? Is there a connection, or have I just made that up in my own head?
There is a connection, and you made it up because you're smart. You thought of it all by yourself because you're brilliant.
I did.
Yeah, there is a connection.
Okay.
So, and I can't swear. Okay, so you're going to be hard put to find studies, evidence that shows that, right? But there is a correlation between like highly processed foods and depression, anxiety, oppositional defiance disorder, autism, ADHD. All these things are aggravated and exacerbated by highly processed, highly refined chemicals in the diet, stuff like petrochemicals in our diet. We've got something like, I read a statistic not long ago, something like 10,000 different chemicals in our food supply that who knows what the heck they do, right? They got introduced to the food supply without being tested. Nobody knows, but here they are. Just right now, within the last couple of weeks, I don't know when it was actually launched. I have to go back and look. But there's a bill that's being floated through the legislature in Illinois to ban 5 different chemical additives to the food being sold in Illinois. And one of them is, well, 2 of them are dyes. One is, I think, red dye number 3, and the other one might be titanium white something something. And then there's brominated oils and things like this, which are actually banned in other countries, oddly enough, because they do see correlations between the chemicals that children eat and how they react and their level of anxiety and how they can focus and whether or not they can sit and attend and learn in a classroom. Actually, there is an amazing study that was done in 2018 by a group. Lead writer is Bruguglia, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's looking at the neurotransmitters that you can find in food. Now, for anybody who's not a, nutrition science nerd, which is how I categorize myself, neurotransmitters are chemicals that we eat or they occur in the body, and they allow different parts of the body to communicate with other parts of the body, right? And there's a whole set of neurotransmitters that are required for central nervous brain function, right? If we don't have these neurotransmitters, it's super difficult to integrate what's going on outside us with what's going on inside us, and for the different parts of the body to communicate with the brain and back and forth and, regulate and manage impulse control and memory issues and fine motor issues and discrimination and learning and things like this, right? So this group, researchers, did a study, and they looked for where do certain neurotransmitters occur in food. And what they found, they looked for at 6 is what I saw. 2 of them are serotonin and dopamine, which are about pleasure and holding off anxiety and depression and satisfaction and things like that. Those are found in plant foods. Things like oranges and tomatoes and spinach and zucchini and maypop and different kinds of beans and stuff. This is where you find those neurotransmitters. If we are not feeding our children or eating ourselves appropriate, a diverse diet, right, first of all, and that they have these neurotransmitters, then we're not getting them, or we're certainly at a deficit. So yeah, there's a lot of correlation between what we eat and our state of mind, let's call it.
I love that. And the fact that you brought in the toxic chemicals that are in the sugary drinks and the things
and
that
pastries, yes,
that parents think that kids should be eating because back in the day they were eating them. Yet the correlation of what ingredients were used 20 years ago, 30 years ago to make these things are different than what they are now.
Yes.
I love that you brought that in. And I wanted to add to that, the state of California has banned these 5 chemicals that you mentioned. And it was years ago, nearly a decade now ago, that they banned these 5 chemicals from being distributed in the state, from anyone selling product in the state. And I think that, as we do more to bring this information out, Meryl, what you are doing, and, as you're sharing, people just are not aware of this, and the fact that they can participate in helping these movements to gain more traction. Now, this is happening in the state of Illinois. What did it take for this to happen? And I also want to mention the fact that in the state of Illinois, what was recently passed, it hasn't been a year yet, as far as changing and mandating plant-based meal options in every school from K to 12th grade. How do people get involved in this kind of stuff, especially through PBNM?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for asking that. That is definitely one of our passion projects. It's something that we work on every day. So I'll take your question kind of in 2 parts. Okay. Hang on to the part about how do we get involved through PBNM. Just don't let me forget that part.
Okay.
Okay. So in the case of what's happened in Illinois, I'm knocking on wood. There are some legislators who see the value in protecting the food supply specifically for our children, and in introducing and making sure that plant-based foods are available, right? So that started, I think, a couple years ago now, and it was just enacted and like made into a law that people have to follow, August of 2023. So just the beginning of this school year. And that is that with a prior request, a plant-based lunch specifically has to be made available to a student in an Illinois school. I believe it was originally planned to be every school in Illinois. I don't know if that's actually how it is now, because some schools don't have lunch programs, right? The kids bring their own lunches, and that's how that is. So I don't know that it applies to every 100% of the schools, right? But where the school is providing a lunch, they have to make a plant-based option available for lunches specifically. It does not apply to breakfast. It does not apply to snack, right? It also includes the milk component. So it would be a fortified soy milk specifically. I don't think they can use like almond or oat milk, because those don't meet the National School Lunch criteria for nutrients. I am just super grateful that there are some people working in the state legislature in Illinois who see that as valuable and important, and are willing to suffer the slings and arrows that I'm sure they're suffering to get that to happen. Illinois is a dairy producing state. They're a cattle growing state. They've got big rural sections. So I'm sure there's some pressure for them around that, but I'm grateful that they do it. As far as how people can get involved, they can go to our website, which is pbnm.org, or you can Google plant-based nutrition movement. And there's a form that they can fill out, contact us, learn more kind of form. And those forms basically come to me, and I respond to any of them that I get. And one way that you can, one thing that your listeners can do is actually launch a project in a school in their own area, and we will support that. Depending upon what it is, sometimes we can help with funding. So for example, right now we have a project running here in Wisconsin, where I live, in a school just north of me. We're in one classroom, which is a 4th and 5th grade split, and we work with the teacher. The teacher there provides a healthy snack to the children, a plant-based snack, 2 to 3 times a week. We have provided the teacher with a refrigerator and an Instant Pot and a Vitamix, and I personally go and bring her groceries as she requests them, and I bring her recipes, and she is able to feed the kids a healthy snack literally 2 or 3 times a week. It can be anything like from oatmeal with blueberries, it could be black beans and rice, mashed potatoes are a big favorite, anything, whatever the kids like, smoothies. She's got a great blender there she can use. And then I go in once a month and speak with the class. And I talk to them and we play games, and I always bring enough food to feed their little faces, because that is my personal desire, is to see these little children load up on black beans and rice and smoothies and whatever else, So that's one way to do it. So we're happy to work with anyone who wants to implement a 6 million seeds project in their school.
And before we leave that topic, there may be a teacher or a parent or a nutritionist who actually wants to do this, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, what's that going to cost to do that? Are there some ways that you can help supplement that cost?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
We have a super generous donor, super generous. If I ever meet this person in real life, I'll probably fall over and faint because I'm so in awe of what they do. So actually we have two donors. One is completely anonymous. I don't know who they are. And the other one is a dear friend in North Carolina. His name is Dolly Parton. And they're willing to help. They're willing to support feeding children healthy food. I of the conversations I have had with them, and like I said, the one I've never met, so it's always through a intermediary. They are completely dedicated to feeding children healthy food and having them grow up, and also back down the animal products, and support the understanding that there is value in life outside of human, the beyond human relatives that we have deserve to be supported and taken care of, right? And we have that power, but we have to stop eating them, right? We have to see them in some other way. They're not just food. They are souls. They are beings. They are life. They have value. They have purpose. They are intelligent. They communicate, so
families.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have them in our houses. There are families.
Absolutely. Well, it never ceases to amaze me, the people, and I know a lot of these people who go out and rescue animals, and they're like all loving on, one cow, one sheep, whatever it may be, and then they go home and they eat meat, and it's like, okay, there's a big disconnect. Before we continue on, I want to remind people that you are listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution Podcast show. I am a co-host of the show, Kathleen Gage, and I am here with Vlynn Hawkins, the other co-host, and our guest today is Meryl Fury, who is with PBNM. My dyslexia was kicking in. Okay, and I want to ask people, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, share it with your friends, because we really want to get this message out. We're having conversations that a lot of people won't have. We're leading the charge on a revolution, the veganpreneur revolution, because things have to change. And, as you were talking, I was thinking about the children that are really, they're innocent victims of other people's decisions and choices. And I'm curious, is there such a thing as redlining communities? Is there such a thing as the lower income communities and communities with people of color that do actually have more of a disadvantage when they are trying to find the resources? Let's talk about that. And people need to hear this.
Okay. Well, these are great questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, these days, I think you'd be hard put to find anyone who would say that redlining still exists. I'm sure if it does exist, it's called something else, and people will say, no, it doesn't exist. But certainly back a couple decades ago, it did exist. And this is one big way that we have segregation in our cities now. Now, I live just south of Milwaukee, which has the lovely honor of being the most segregated city in the country. Who knew? Who knew?
Whoa.
Yeah, but it is. The Black people live in one section, and the Puerto Ricans live over here, and the Mexicans live over here, and the white people live over there. It's something else. So yeah, there are pockets of disadvantage that are by no accident. They were created, right? And in those areas, and they're primarily people of color living in those areas. And then anybody else who doesn't have any money can also be in there. It's okay. They don't discriminate like that. Those pockets also have a lot of times higher rates of violence and poorer quality housing and poorer quality water, lead pipes going to houses carrying the water, and poor access to medical facilities. And of course, they are nutritionally very poorly resourced. Very difficult to get fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, whole grains. A lot of people in those very low income areas are shopping in gas stations and corner stores and things like that. So, a fresh meal looks like that sausage pizza that came off the
Out of the oven.
the thing, right? Or the roller dogs,
Mhm.
on the roller
Mhm.
things. So yes, it exists. One of the things that I look at in those cases, so as a public health nurse, those are the areas I worked in a lot, primarily in Illinois. People not having access to healthy food and all those other things, so we call those the social determinants of health, right? All those facets of life that impact a person's health. Besides genetics, we're not looking at genetics when we're talking about this stuff, right? But those social determinants of health, your access to clean water and clean air and safe environments, healthy food, adequate education, those things, if they're not there, they rob whole sections, whole zip codes of their human potential. So those children growing up in those environments never will have a chance. They will never have a chance to attain a decent standard of living and something. They'd have to be like way outside of the statistics, right? It's unconscionable what we do to those sections of the population that live in those areas. It's horrible.
So how do we start healing that whole process? Because it's like what's so frustrating as the more research I do and the deeper and deeper I go into the whole vegan lifestyle and vegan movement, and it's not about, forcing people to believe the way I do, but there are certain realities that we've been lied to, we've been manipulated. There's a great book that just came out called Ultra Processed People. It goes beyond the salt, sugar, fat book. It goes beyond the fast food genocide. I mean, it really digs deep into all the manipulation. And when you start telling this to people, they go, oh, you're into conspiracy theories. It's like, no, I'm into reality. I'm into fact. And how do we start healing people that are being subjected to this? And how do we educate people? It's like, it feels like we're just scratching the surface with the kind of information that is being made available. And now with AI, you never know what's true and what's not true. I mean, it's frightening what's going to be happening with AI. It's a blessing on some levels, but it really is going to be a curse on other levels. So
A cause for concern on some levels.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Most
So
definitely.
what can people do individually? You've touched on a few things, but you know, it bears repeating. We need to hear it over and over and over again.
Yeah. You know, this is what I call a gnarly problem. Wicked,
Mhm,
gnarly problem,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
It touches everything. It's multifaceted. It's deeply rooted. It's got ramifications all across the country, right? For all ages, all socioeconomic statuses. This is a gnarly problem, right? And there are conflicting interests here, right? So there's people who want to see a change. There's people who want to see everyone. You know, I was looking at a quote the other day by a civil rights activist so long ago during the women's suffrage movement. And one of the things, her name was Mary Church Terrell, I think. And what she was saying was the importance of lifting as we climb, right? Bring somebody with you when you go. If you can climb out of the crab bucket, right? Take somebody with you. So you know, it's such a tough problem. And there's, like I said, conflicting interests. People who have great power and authority in the society are gaining benefit from having a whole section of the population down, right? So that's part of what we're fighting. I wish I had an answer for this question, Kathleen. I wish I had an answer.
Mhm.
The only thing I personally have been able to come to is I will feed these children. I will teach these children about they have power in this. They have a say in how it goes, but they can't just follow along blindly with what the last 2 or 3 generations did, sadly, right?
Mhm.
So offer opportunities for change, offer other ways of seeing things, and encourage children, and you know, hopefully their parents will come along to see things differently. It's a gnarly problem. It's terrible. It's terrible what's been created.
You know,
I
that's a great
totally
way of
agree.
putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I love what you're talking about as far as, you know, teaching children. Um, you know, there are children who want to learn and they're just, you know, the total sponge. Teach me everything. You know, why is the sky blue kind of questions come
Right.
out of them. And then you've got the ones who have reached a certain age and, you know, they've seen parents live and do, and they think they're the they know enough to know it all.
Sure.
And then there are, and I'm going like from one group to the next, those children who kind of recognize their own potential and are beginning to ask the question, you know, I don't feel good. What happened? Why is this? And it takes me back to, in this instance, the kids in Illinois who were athletes and, you know, having plant-based meals served at home and going to school and eating and thinking, you know, I don't feel good and I'm an athlete and I can't perform like this. And being able to talk to their parents, and their parents being parents of influence, being able to take the next step. And, you know, that's sort of short version how the Illinois bill came about. But let's talk about this interaction between parents and children. And, you know, the parents who know what can they do for children, and the children who are learning, like the children in your classes who can go home and, you know, spark a conversation with a parent and say, you know, I don't want chicken nuggets like that anymore. Can we have, you know, this or something like that? I know that's a huge question, But from your perspective, kind of take us on that journey about what maybe each segment can do, from the parent to the child to the parent, and just take us through that space.
Okay, this is a big question. How much time do you have? I'll be here till tonight sometime. Okay, here's one thing I'll just put out there right up front. Even in really, really affluent neighborhoods, the adults don't know. They don't know. We have been, over a couple generations now, misled to think that giving children cakes with pink icing is a beautiful thing to do, or celebrating every holiday, birthday, and time that anytime you do anything, you celebrate with cake and ice cream and cookies and heavy animal-centric diet is a sign of affluence, and you attain something. We've been misled, and willingly so, in a way, right? We have come to believe that our government always 100% of the time has our best interest at heart, and that all of the decisions that are made in the realm of food and health and all of that are always going to be in our, for us and not against us. And that's not necessarily the case. So I'll tell you this story, not far from here, just a little bit south, on what we call the North Shore of Chicago, which is right on Lake Michigan. That is where two of the richest towns in the Midwest exist. Right, they're right next to each other, and they go back and forth. This year it's one town, and the next year it's the other town. I guess it depends who moves in where at what point, right? But these are the richest towns in the Midwest. They do not have a national or federally funded school lunch programs in these schools because they don't have any kids that qualify. Right? All of their children are very well off. Even if you go in the slummy parts of those towns, which really don't exist, but the worst parts of those towns, that zip code is still going to pull a couple $1 million for a 2-bedroom ranch built in 1950. Okay.
Wow.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Anyway, those schools, because there's no children that qualify for the school lunch program, and the parents are extremely well off, they had to figure out what to do about the school. What are the kids going to eat at school for lunch? And the parents weren't interested in fixing lunch every day, I suppose. And somehow it didn't occur to them to hire a chef or a caterer or have the school kitchens cook. They weren't doing that. They decided instead to provide, at least in this one town is called Winnetka. They decided to provide a daily rolling menu of fast food for these children. So every day at lunch, those kids get Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, Pizza Hut, Domino's, Kentucky Fried, Popeyes, whatever it is, every day. And that's in a community where people really have options, right? Okay, so what can you do? First, you'd have to teach the parents in that case, right? Because they made this decision. This is what gets funneled into their school, right? And then the children have to deal with that, the effects of all that, right? So it would take, 1 or 2 or 5, a small committee of enlightened people to push back against that and say, this is not appropriate. This is not healthy. Nowhere on the planet would someone say, yeah, just give these kids fast food every day. So it's like I said, it's a gnarly problem. You have people who are very well off, and that usually goes along with being extremely well educated, and also includes having some level of authority and efficacy and agency, right? But they don't have a clear understanding of what any of this is. So it's going to take something. It's going to take quite a lever to pry that loose.
Well,
Wow.
and I think a place to really start is for people to know what the truth is, that the food manufacturers have spent billions of dollars to convince us of something that's not true, that it is true. I was in the grocery store the other day, and I was walking by the dairy department, and there was a sign, 3 glasses of milk a day does a body good. I was shocked in this day and age that sign was up.
Right.
And I wanted to go rip it off, but then, that was not my place to do in my activism for that day. But the reality is that there's big pharma involved, there's healthcare involved, there's the food manufacturers. And a lot of times people say, oh, you can't talk about that. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it because our very existence is on the line. And I want to take a step back on your healthcare background and to define for people who really don't know what the difference is between chronic illnesses and acute. What's the difference between chronic and acute healthcare issues?
Such a good question. Okay. Acute is something that is happening right now and a short-term issue. So something like the flu, right? You expect it's going to last 7 days. We hope not more than that. Or a cold, 7 to 10 days, right? That's an acute issue. Could also be something like a broken ankle.
A broken wrist. When I broke my wrist,
That's an acute issue. It's happening right now, not expected to last forever. That's, you're going to put a cast on it, and it's going to last something like 6 to 8 weeks, right? And then your bone's going to knit itself back together, and you might be sore for a little while, but it's not going to be a problem forever, right? That's an acute issue. Sore throat, things like this are acute issues. Maybe a bacterial infection where you're going to take antibiotics. That's an acute issue. Even pneumonia, which is like a big one, right? An acute issue. It's not expected to last forever. A chronic issue is something that when you go to the doctor and they say, you've got diabetes, you've got high blood pressure, you've got heart disease, you've got cancer, that's expected to last a long time, perhaps your entire life. And when they give you the medication for that, a lot of times they're going to tell you this is a lifetime issue. You're going to be taking these meds for the rest of your life. You can also expect, just by nature of how our medical system is set up, that very often those medications will be changed and or increased over time, because that's just the nature of that, right? So that's the difference between acute and chronic. Is that pretty clear?
It does. And which leads into the next series of questions, which would be, what percentage, if I don't know if you have these numbers or not, but of the, let's do the childhood population, what percentage of children are moving into the chronic category? And they're being led to believe that the only solution is that medicine, that next pill that they need to take, which has horrendous side effects. And then they take a pill for the side effect, and on it goes. So do you have any numbers on that?
I don't have any numbers on that, but I can tell you the trends are like this. We're only increasing in those diagnoses every year. So that now there are more children with heart issues. So let's see if I can recall. I can't recall the numbers, but heart issues, diabetes, high blood pressure. I'm going to say there's one in 25 children now have elevated blood pressure, and maybe 1 in 10. I'm not sure of the numbers, but it's 1 in 10, let's say. And I can get you the numbers. Maybe we can put them in your show notes. Actually have a diagnosis of high blood pressure. Now, these are illnesses that, as you said earlier, used to be adult onset only. Obesity, that's a big one. No pun intended. Children, obese children, that used to not be a thing. but
Mhm.
now it's very common, right? And those numbers are only getting steeper all the time.
Well,
You know,
let's stay.
oh, go
I'm
ahead, Dee.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let's stay with the children, thinking about the children for right now, and teaching them about being responsible for their own health. But even more than that, smaller kids don't get the connection. Older kids do. How can we do that in like gardening and cooking, perhaps?
Yeah,
What what are what have you done?
there's some things that work. Well, with the little kids, actually kids in general, our are more connected to it, makes more sense. It resonates with them more readily if we come at it from the angle of either taking care of the planet or being kind to animals, right? A child at 10 years old, even 16 years old, 18 years old, by and large, are not worried about the heart attack that I might have when I'm 55. That's just, it's a developmental stage where they think they're invincible. So that doesn't work. But to bring them the information more from the angle of planetary health or animal compassion is more likely to resonate with them. For elementary school kids and even middle school kids, and I'd venture to say you could bring it into the high school, if you can get them in a garden, have them plant some seeds, have them grow some sprouts, have them, go, even if you have little seedlings, things that have already sprouted, and put those in the dirt and have them care for those, have them watch as they grow flowers and grow fruit and then harvest that and then cook it. Research has shown that children are way more likely to eat what they grow and way more even likely to eat it if they've cooked it themselves. So that's a super valuable way to do it. Another thing I think is lacking, something that could be really helpful in so many ways. In so many households, we've lost the art of having conversation over a meal. We have our devices and we have the TV on, and that's what we're doing while we eat, and we're touching the screen and all of that. It stops the exchange and the relationship investment that happens over a meal. So we actually created at PBNM, we created a set of cards, conversation starter cards, that a child could take and just pull any card. There's no surprise weirded out cards in there. They're all pretty bland cards, right? We're not asking about politics, we're not asking about religion. We're just
come on.
I know.
Well, what would be some of the questions? What are some of the conversations?
You know what? Hold on. Let me go get a deck.
And how does somebody get a deck?
Go to pbnm.org and fill out there's a request form, just request for info. I am sad to say that there's no way to just automatically buy these. We haven't built that into the website, but that's a really good idea. So look for that in the very near future. But so questions like, do you daydream? Tell me about something that you like to daydream about. Or tell me about something you think you couldn't live without. What would happen if you had to go without it?
Wow.
Or tell me about something you learned today. And the child can ask these of their parent, their grandparent, and the adult person can reciprocate, right? The caretaker, caregiver can reciprocate. Tell me about your favorite food to eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
I love those.
Excellent. And what's the cost to somebody to buy those?
These are $7 for a set.
Okay.
And yeah, you can just recycle them, keep using them, ask again.
I love them. I love them.
$7.
Why don't you hold them up so people can see them? And
Plus
They are
shipping
not
and handling.
super fancy
those are
looking.
awesome.
These are actually like the prototype set.
Okay.
That's what they look like out of the box.
Oh,
There's
awesome.
Nice.
Oh,
the
very
customer on the
cool.
back.
Okay. Okay. And you could even play a game where, like, pick a card, any card.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, and you
Oh,
can set up the rules. The way it's sort of described in the deck is the youngest person starts. So the
okay.
youngest
Okay.
person picks the card and asks the older person.
Oh, that's
But you
awesome.
can play it any way you want. You could, deal out 5 cards and you hold them up and the other person chooses a card. You could play Go Fish. You could play whatever you want with them, right?
You know who I think would love those, and she might distribute them for you? Dolly Parton. She does the whole reading stuff. She's distributed millions. I just had that download. It's
Oh,
like Dolly Parton needs to get a deck of those with an explanation of what they do and why it would help children to read better. I mean, there's that nice little connection. I'm just having this major download right now of like,
okay.
she will be a part of this because she is so into children reading. Her dad couldn't read. And
Oh.
so I think that's what motivates her to do what she does. And yet, if children are struggling to have a healthy meal, they can't read at the level they would if they had a nice, healthy, plant-based meal. And I
Right.
also
And
got this, you talked about, teaching children to plant seeds. Well, it used to be teach a man to fish. And that's why men are so aggressive, is because they go out fishing. That's a fact. But if you teach a child to plant a seed, they'll eat for a lifetime.
Yes, they will.
I
Thank
love
you.
I
that,
love it.
That's
Kathleen.
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank
Um,
you.
And I love what you're doing, Meryl, because it's like it pains me every time I go to the grocery store. I live in a rural community, so I'm not around a lot of children. But when I go to the grocery store, I see what a disadvantage they have. And the grocery stores, a lot of grocery stores are near fast food restaurants. And we recently had a power outage because of ice storms, and I finally made it into town. Drove by McDonald's, Starbucks, Burger King, Wendy's, and every single one had lines around the block. And I'm like, do you know what you're doing? And they
Yeah.
don't. They don't know what they're doing. And so what you're doing is so important to educate people so that our children have a fair chance at life.
Well,
And
thank you.
absolutely.
it's
So, Meryl, tell people where you are going to be. Are you speaking someplace? Do you speak at certain groups? And how might they plug in with your Facebook group or whatever to make sure that they stay plugged into this conversation about child's health and nutrition?
Well, thank you so much for asking that. I do a fair amount of public speaking. So one way is that I'm very happy to speak on Zoom if you're like far away. We can do presentations on Zoom. I also speak at churches, and a fair amount of that, I'm looking at my calendar over here. I will be at the Peapod conference in Raleigh coming up in June. And I will be at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine doing a workshop in October. And then in between times, I also, like I said, I'm going to a school literacy night coming up pretty soon, where we'll be doing a dinner and conversation cards. And then in between, I just, I take other, wherever I can go. I have no hesitation and no arrogance about where I speak. I'll speak anywhere, anytime on anybody else's platform. I'm thrilled to, because my goal is to get this message outside of the echo chamber. I want to stop. I mean, I'm happy to speak to the choir, but I want to get outside of the choir and outside the echo chamber and speak to people who don't have the message.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I was going to say is I'll get you my calendar such as it is at this point, but I'm always applying to different nursing conferences and different things like that. So right now I have probably 5 already scheduled for this year. I'll be speaking at the Wisconsin Association of Nutrition and Dietetics coming up in April as well. So those are kind of like the big rocks in the jar, and then other little ones get put in all year long. So
I know there's a little big one that's coming up that you're doing. That's a 3-part series.
yes.
Tell everybody about that.
So there's one, it'll be February 1st, first Thursday of each month for February, April.
March and April.
Thank you. February, March, and April. And that you can find and register if you go to Eventbrite. But we also have a separate link, and maybe we should put that in the show notes as well.
We will do that.
Yeah.
And just to make it easier on people that may be listening to this, or, they're watching, but we don't have the link on the bottom. What's the easiest way to get in touch with you directly? Would it be through your LinkedIn page, your Facebook page, an email address? I want to make it so easy on people.
The easiest way is my email address.
Which is?
All these platforms is like too much information sometimes coming at me all different ways. Just email is great. My email is Meryl Fury, MERYL, F like in Frank, URY, at pbnm.org. That's the best way.
Okay,
Awesome.
I'm going to put it up right now, and let me do a save on this, add banner, and let's show it. It's right there, and I'm going to make it actually scroll if I can figure this out. It's like too much technology for me. I'll tell you what. Okay, here it is. So it's Meryl Fury at PBM.
No.
And oh my goodness, I thought I had that right. Let me fix it.
While she's fixing that, I really want everyone to know that we are so grateful to have had you on the show today, because this is yet another conversation that needs to go out to the broad spectrum. Children's health and nutrition is something that, as adults, we want to think that we're the most important. And there are people who really are out there for the kids. We want to connect with them because there's an entire new level of interest and impact that can be made for our children. And that's in this nutrition space. So Meryl, if you had one thing that you wanted to ask or share with our audience to wrap things up for today, which this has just been tremendous, what would you like to share with our audience? What are your parting thoughts?
Feed your children healthy food. Just disrupt the habit of cheap, quick, easy food, right? So my husband's a construction worker, and he'll say, you can't have all three. You can't have cheap, quick, and good. You can only have two of the three, right? We have to take that in. We have to keep that in mind, I think, about food. If good is required, right? It has to be food. It has to be real food. It has to be able to nourish the body, prevent illness, support healing, growth, learning, work, play, all that. Then we have to invest in that. That has to be a priority. And probably cheap and quick are going to get left out. You can do some things quickly. You can find ways to save time, and it can be inexpensive, but you don't generally get all three at once. And even when you can I shouldn't say that. You can pull together, like I love black beans and rice, right? It's cheap. It's not quick. It's good, right? We have to be mindful of what we're doing. Food is medicine, right? It's also information. It tells our bodies what to do. It's like the software for what our bodies do. And if we're giving our body counterfeit software, stuff that doesn't tell the body what to do correctly, it's going to go awry. And I've never met really a parent who says, I want my child to suffer with obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, ADHD, autism. I've never met that parent. So we have to be aware that the food that we give creates a predisposition for certain things. And the food that's going to keep the child healthiest for the longest run is whole fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains. It's the same stuff, right? Beans and legumes and mushrooms. That's it. And all the pink and blue and bright green foods and the highly refined foods and the super sugary, sweet, salty, they're not even foods. Those are food-like substances. They are not food, and they do not carry the child for the long run.
Well said. Beautiful.
That's so well said. Yes. And this has been amazing. I love what you're doing. And I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to invite you on the show. Vlynn, I adore you and I love what we're doing together to lead this revolution. And I want to remind people that you have been listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution podcast show. Please leave a rating and a review, subscribe to this channel, share it with your friends. We are leading a charge for the revolution to raise the awareness that we have to stop doing what we've been doing, make the changes, and build a healthier, more compassionate, more environmentally friendly environment and world.
Amen, sister. Eat more plants.
That's right. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time on the Veganpreneur Revolution.
You've been listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution podcast show with Vlynn, Hawkins, and Kathleen Gage. Be sure to leave a review, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel. And visit our website at veganvisibilityproductions.com. That's veganvisibilityproductions.com. Have a great day and live healthy.